So I'm pleased today to have with me Holly Brady, who's a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst and a Certified Financial Planner with over 20 years of experience. In a divorce case, Holly works closely with her clients to help them to find a financial fair agreement during a time when they're feeling financially scared and emotionally exhausted. So we're here today to learn more about the services that Holly provides and the benefits that using her services can have for divorcing families. So welcome, Holly. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Great. So if you can tell me a little bit more about what a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst is and how it can help separating and divorcing couples.
Sure. A Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, or short term is CDFA, is a financial professional who's received specialized training in the areas of divorce and separation. We don't replace the need for legal counsel. We have very specific knowledge in what is matrimonial property, and also what are the legal entitlements to the property and how it can be divided according to legislation. We help to dispel any misunderstandings and myths when it comes to dividing marital property. And more importantly, CDFAs help clients in understanding their finances and what a proposed division of property will mean to them in the short and long-term financial time horizon.
Okay. Thank you so much. And you've mentioned a few different things that a CDFA might do. Can you sort of expand on, I know when we talked before, you had a really handy bullet point list of sort of some of the things that, you're able to do to help families moving forward on the financial side of their divorce. Can you provide our viewers with that list?
Absolutely.
Just go through it?
Yeah, absolutely. We properly gather and screen all of the financial documents that's required for the financial data of the matrimonial property. We can organize all of those financial documents, and then we determine the short-term and long-term financial impact of proposed settlements. We can explain tax-adjusted values of assets like retirement savings accounts and pensions. We offer valuable insight to the pros and cons of different settlement proposals. We help you avoid the conflict of very common financial pitfalls of divorce. And we create personalized reports and projections illustrating the financial status, cash flow, and net worth of both parties. And we provide financial documents to their respective lawyers upon request.
That's perfect. So it sounds like you work in, you can either work with families separately or you can sort of work as part of a team, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
So working with the lawyers as opposed to independent from them, is what it kind of sounds like. You talked a little bit about some projections that you can do and some cash flow and budgeting and retirement and that sort of thing. Can you tell me a little bit? I know that there's some software, some specialized software that you're able to use, and I think it's not just you specifically; it's sort of you as that role, the Certified Divorce Financial Specialist or Analyst. You're able to provide some help with some projections. So can you describe that a little bit more?
Sure. The most common concern people have is how, will they be okay financially post-divorce, and what will their financial future look like? So I provide financial forecasts of what they'll be able to afford based on a proposed division of matrimonial property. The software really allows me to include any additional debt that they may have to take on to buy out the spouse of a matrimonial home, or pay for an equalization payment or a lump sum spousal support amount. It allows me to customize the projections based on any settlement scenario that are being explored by the couple, so they can both make informed financial decisions from their future, and they can visualize it.
So it sounds like it would be really helpful if sort of, you're working with your lawyer, a client is working with their lawyer, and, there's a sort of scenario A, B, and C, and there's some options for settlement. It sounds like it would be really helpful. Can you confirm, you're able to sort of, the client could bring in those scenarios and have you even plot them in that software to sort of help them to understand what scenario A, how that would affect their future, and scenario B, scenario C.
Exactly. Once we have all of financial data inputted into the software, it's really easy for me to customize, okay, if this is the scenario that we're looking at, how does it compare to scenario C, or should we go with scenario B? Does that make my cash flow, my net worth for both parties a little bit more sound?
Yeah, no, that's great. So you talked about working with divorcing families. Now, I'm just wondering the difference of when you would work with both spouses together, or if you would more so just work with one spouse, or is there a, sort of how do we differentiate who you would work with and what that case would look like?
Absolutely. I'm happy to work with both spouses or just one spouse of the divorcing couple or separating couple. Sometimes one spouse is not as financially savvy or feels disadvantaged by their lack of knowledge in their finances. So I can help them in understanding their finances better. Whoever it is that wants to work with me, I'm more than happy to work with them. Working with both parties, I can effectively advise them on what a proposed settlement would look like and how each of them would fare financially post-divorce.
Okay, and a lot of our audience knows what they've looked into various process options that they could use. So there's mediation, there's collaborative divorce, there's settlement-based negotiations, litigation, and there's sort of even the kitchen table discussions, the sort of do-it-yourself option, as I call it. So would it look different if you were helping families that are inside of a particular process like mediation or collaborative divorce versus outside?
It does slightly. Collaborative divorce brings more of a holistic approach to the divorce process, which is something that I support wholeheartedly. And using this process, it allows for better communication, understanding the financial interests of each spouse. I work in that process as a financial neutral, and it allows me to maintain an unbiased approach in providing my financial guidance and analysis. Mediation would be very similar. I'd be a financial neutral to help both parties understand their financial futures.
Yeah, and I would assume that when you talk about the role as a neutral, it sounds like when you're working with both parties, when they're in a particular process like collaborative divorce or mediation, you would be basically working for both of them. So you're not trying to advise them that, that this scenario is better for one person or advocating for a particular scenario. It's more sort of a neutral approach, it sounds like. And I would imagine that part of the benefit would be to have the trust of both parties to providing something that will, maybe work for both of them rather than just work when you were working with one of them.
Absolutely. It helps to reduce that conflict between lawyers and the client. So it really, I do prefer the collaborative or mediation process as much.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I think of the collaborative divorce, the collaborative divorce process or even mediation, where, you need to get an appraisal on a home, and you can either one spouse goes out and gets their own appraisal, the other spouse gets their own appraisal, and then they fight about which appraisal is better versus, agreeing ahead of time. We agree that we're going to use this particular appraiser, and we're both going to be able to be present for that appraisal. You plan it in advance, and you make sure you're both available, and then you go ahead and you get the appraisal, and it feels a lot more neutral because you've both agreed ahead of time to using that person, and you can each of you can individually ask that person questions, and in an appraiser point of view, I would imagine it would be very similar in your role where you're there to advise both of them, and then they can both ask you questions. And then the person, for example, who might be less financially savvy could ask you could work with them a little bit more to help them to kind of bridge that gap and to bring them to the same level as maybe the person who is a little bit more financially savvy.
It does. And it just helps keep that process going further and further to the goal line. And it allows them to really customize their settlement options so that they can feel confident about those decisions, because that is so important.
So I want to go to my very favorite part of all of my interviews. It's my top 3 tips. I always like to have my viewers walk away with really something practical that they can use going forward in their separation and divorce. Everyone's at a little bit of a different stage when they're watching this video as far as their divorce journey. So let's hear it. I gave you some advanced warning. I was going to ask you for your top 3 tips, so you got to prepare a little bit. So let's hear it.
It's very basic. First, you need to be in the know of your finances, and this means knowing how to log on to online financial platforms like bank accounts, your government online account like CDFA or IRS, and investments, etc. And if you don't already have one, register for the online account service with the federal government to obtain your own logon credentials. So that's the biggest way that you'll be in the know.
And I just with that, I would guess that it's probably very frequent. I mean, there's typically a financial manager of the family and a non-financial manager of the family, and I would guess that one of the spouses probably doesn't have a lot of that online access because they've just never taken care of it. Not because they don't care about it or they aren't allowed to. It's just that's just been their relationship. And so getting all of that information could take some time. And so to be able to plan that in advance, I think would be so helpful to do it sort of in a less stressed way, is to just start to gather.
To not stall the process.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps things moving at a regular pace that they want to keep moving, at their own, in their own time frame. Mm-hmm. But it definitely doesn't create that homework item because they've already done it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So it allows them easy access to their previous income tax returns, notice of assessments or assessment notices from the government, and government benefits that they might be entitled to. So it helps bring everybody their tax information to light.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, tip number 2.
Tip number 2 is gather any documents relating to anything financial, including but not limited to your paper income tax returns. Some people can't even put their fingertips on those, so make sure you understand or know where they're at. Mm-hmm. Any property and investment statements, bank account statements, and make a copy for your spouse, because if it's jointly held, like a jointly held account, investment account, or bank account that's jointly held, they're going to need to provide this as part of their disclosure as well. So, let's just make it easier on everybody and don't take the only copy. Just provide that copy for everybody.
And that's a really interesting point, because the disclosure process is mutual, and sometimes spouses can tend to play that game a little bit of, I'm not going to give you copies of, or, I don't have access to, so I can't get such and such. And, I always say it's not if you're going to get it, it's when and how much is it going to cost. And, to me, it's let's get down to the substance of the matter. Let's not focus our time, energy, and resources on, delaying in that way, so that taking that cooperative approach can be very helpful for clients.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Hiding accounts or financial documents will only delay the process, which will only cost more money in the long run. And the information is going to be eventually found out. So let's open and honest.
It's not if, it's how and when, right?
Right. Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, number 3.
Number 3 is very simple. Don't be afraid to ask questions. This is your financial future, and you need to understand your finances and where you are going. Financial literacy is not taught in schools, and we all have to learn about it sometimes. So if you find yourself feeling a bit disadvantaged by the lack of your financial knowledge, enlist the help and guidance of a professional like me.
Yeah, no, and that's that can't be underscored enough. In order to be able to make an informed choice on your future, you have to have the information first. And so often one spouse will start at a more disadvantaged place because they haven't been part of that throughout the relationship, and so that can be really tough.
Yeah, it's quite common. Yeah.
Thanks. And I don't want to forget about cost. Now, obviously, our users are from all over the world, and so the cost of using a professional like you is going to be varied. But if you can just give our viewers a little bit of an idea of what they can expect for cost. So, for example, in a sort of an approximate number of hours that they can expect to enlist your resources, and is that flexible? Are they able to sort of customize that? Because what we know, of course, of people going through divorce is that it can be very challenging. They're already having to hire a divorce professional, a lawyer. They might be already sort of at the end of their financial rope. But let's give a little idea on the cost and the flexibility around cost.
Absolutely. So For someone like me, I charge an hourly rate and request a retainer up front, and I think that's pretty standard across the board for all CDFAs and professionals in the same type of designation. Now, if they only need me to help them organize their financial disclosure into binders for the lawyers, then it will typically take me about 3 hours, but maybe more if they have an abundance of accounts, or if there are businesses that they own or are partnerships in. It may take a little bit more. But for financial projections, it can take around 5 hours. And it includes our initial meeting time to discuss their financial concerns and goals, my time to review their financial documents to gain an understand on their matrimonial property, and enter all the data required for the financial projections. Then we need the second time to review my analysis and projections and discuss further any concerns or possible settlement options. But in most cases, it takes less than 5 hours.
And what I would assume as well, when some of the services that you were just describing there, you know, even gathering financial disclosure, that sort of thing, I mean, that has to be done by someone. And it's not that it doesn't sound like you're doing a lot of duplication of work. So if you're doing it instead of, for example, the law firm doing it, of one or both of the divorcing, separating or divorcing family. And so, you know, it would sound like we can actually combine some of those resources and not have that duplication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not just have one person do the financial disclosure and off to everybody involved in the divorce team, and then it makes it very simple.
Yeah, and you sort of hand it to the divorce team on a silver platter a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's all organized, it's there, it's scanned in, it's organized, the spreadsheet's done, that sort of thing. No, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, and my final question for you is just to internationalize this a little bit. So Holly, of course, you're from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and right in my neck of the woods, but we have viewers from all over the world. So give us a little idea, if someone's not from Canada, where, you know, how would they know how to employ the resources of someone with your particular skill set? How can we globalize this?
Well, you know, take into consideration that money is money no matter what province or country that you live in. And whether you're drafting a budget or discussing the taxation of a retirement savings account or a non-registered investments, it's pretty much the same, you know, across Canada for sure, but, you know, internationally as well. So you know, while we don't provide the legal advice, for myself, I can work with anyone in any province and territories. And even if they feel that they're more comfortable working with someone in their home province, then they can simply go to the website for the Institute of Divorce Financial Analysts at www.institutedfa.com and find a CDFA professional in their area. There are other professional designations like the CDFA, which are Chartered Financial Divorce Analyst, and a financial divorce specialist. So just depending on where they get their designation, whether it's in the US or Canada or another country, it's going to be very similar type of designation across the board.
And the other thing to remark on is specifically with respect to the collaborative divorce process, that's a process that's used by divorce professionals internationally. And a lot of times within the collaborative divorce associations that's you know, various practice groups all over the world, there's divorce specialists like you, financial divorce specialists like you, who are actually part of those local practice groups, and so the resources are actually readily available, right? You know, as a referral, even from the collaborative divorce lawyer, right there locally, and it can be handed right to them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's what I like about the collaborative process, is it's a really holistic approach, because it does bring in not just the lawyers, but financial specialists like me, and then mental health specialists and child specialists to help the family, you know, discuss their issues and communicate better.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Holly, today for talking to us about a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst and how you can be helpful in a divorce case. It sounds like, of course, we just talked about the globalization of this. Wherever you are in the world, you'll be able to find someone with your skill set. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks.